And I was so like wrapped up in my head. And I said, I know this is like going to be the hardest thing I ever do in my life. And she said to me, I think you should see it as the most beautiful adventure you're ever going to have.
This is a space for stories that matter. Stories of resilience, reinvention, and real human connection. I'm Danielle Elliott-Smith, and this is Hope Comes to Visit, where we say the hard things, feel the big feelings, and remember we're not alone. My guest today has a beautiful story of hope and inspiration. Marla Cichowski is a former award-winning TV journalist turned communications executive, writer, and proud SMBC, single mother by choice. She's based in Chicago. For nearly 2 decades, she reported from the front lines of some of the world's most pivotal moments, from presidential campaigns to natural disasters, from the protests in Ferguson, Missouri, to the streets of Havana during a historic diplomatic shift between the U.S. and Cuba. After her journalism career, Marla Cichowski transitioned into public relations, leading media strategy for global brands in travel, tourism, including the Illinois Office of Tourism and Korea Tourism Organization at a creative communications agency. Her love of travel and adventure once took her on a 5-month solo journey around the world, all sparked by a one-way ticket to Thailand. Through it all, Marla has stayed grounded in the power of storytelling. She and I have that in common. And in the belief that even during life's hardest chapters, hope has a way of showing up. Today, she brings that same spirit to her most important role yet, being a proud mom to her bright, hilarious 5-year-old daughter. Her reminder that dreams, no matter how long they take, are always worth chasing. Let's take a quick moment to thank the people that support and sponsor the podcast. When life takes an unexpected turn, you deserve someone who will stand beside you. St. Louis attorney Chris Dully offers experienced one-on-one legal defense. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com. That's DULLE lawfirm.com for a free consultation. Marla, I'm so excited you're here. I have to say, I think, you and I were talking a little bit before we jumped on air that it's such a gift to me when people take the time to listen to the show, but also when they reach out with their own stories of hope. And you and I have a bit of a history going way back. Our paths have crossed through friends, through weddings, through work at the Illinois Tourism. But hearing your story of hope and you saying, this is what hope means to me, it just filled my heart with so much warmth and beauty. Thank you for being here.
Oh, well, thank you for having me. And it's such an honor to be here and join you on this journey. And I'm so proud of you, and congrats to you on this new podcast. I think it's fantastic. And yeah, I mean, it's amazing to think of how much life we have lived since we first met many years ago, standing up in our friend's wedding down in Jekyll Island, and
right.
How much has changed since then. But so many, beautiful life moments. I'm just so happy to be here.
So I love that when you reached out to me, you said, this is what hope means to me, right? So your journey, I didn't even know that Single Mother by Choice had its own acronym, right? So let's start there. So at what point did you say, I think that this is a path I would like to take on my own?
Yeah. I mean, honestly, yeah. If you would have asked me, more than 7 years ago, what that acronym meant, SMBC, I would have no idea. It was not on my radar. I think, in my 30s, I was working. And as you mentioned, like, very busy traveling for, the news networks I was working for at the time. And boom, before you know it, in the flash of an eye, there goes a whole decade, right? And, I was in a relationship towards like my middle to late 30s. And then when that ended, really had to get serious about the thought of, okay, like, now what? If I want to be a mom,
right,
what does that look like? And I have this frame that's in my living room that says, create the things you wish existed. And I look at it every day, and I get emotional just thinking about it, because it is truly a reflection of everything that I worked to do in order to pursue my dream of becoming a mom and having my daughter. I'm from, I would say, a fairly small family. So, my family, I always looked at big families growing up going, wow, you have how many siblings or how many cousins? And that just wasn't the case for me. And so, my mom's an only child. My dad has one sister, and then they have one daughter. So like one true first cousin. And I grew up with my older brother, 3 years older than me. And our family went through, one of the worst things you can go through. When I was in high school, my brother was killed by a drunk driver. And at the age of 19, I was just before my 16th birthday. And that stays with you forever, right? And you'll never, people talk about, when you go through a terrible tragedy of closure, and I just don't believe in that. It's with you at every stage of life, and it affects you differently in every stage of life. So he was my only sibling. And so obviously, and to this day, I still refer to him as my older brother when I'm talking to people, but that changed me. And then, of course, growing up, and then now, with friends, having kids and seeing their families grow, I'm suddenly saying to myself, I don't have nieces and nephews. I don't have, siblings that are going to create a family that I can suddenly become the fun aunt, So here I am saying, I want to be a mom. How is this going to happen? And then I asked two close friends if they would consider being a donor for me. And one of them, we went down the path. And I would say we got, a little deep into it, and then realized there was some conversations. We had to have some very, very personal and deep conversations around this topic, as you can imagine. And that it kind of was a turning point at that point. And it was like, you know what? I think it's for the best that maybe I go and try to seek out a donor on my own, someone who I don't know personally. So
do you mind if I ask?
Yeah.
What was the turning point in the conversation with that friend that you said, maybe it's better that I don't know, that I go the sperm donor route, as compared to knowing this individual who maybe could have been the father, but we could co-parent? Or is it just that individual did not want to be an active parent? Or what was the deviation?
Yeah, he was basically just on a different stage of life, than me, slightly older, but just not, obviously I wasn't asking him to be a co-parent. It was more along the lines of somebody who I admire and respect and trust and have known a very long time. And was like, if there's anyone that I could see this, maybe happening with, he would be it. And then as the conversations and the process started to unfold in terms of, okay, now you got to do this. And now you each got to talk to, I think it was you each had to talk to different therapists and counselors, because, it's obviously a very serious process. And so in those conversations, are intended to kind of cut through the weeds and kind of boil it down to are you really prepared for what this means? And I think, at the end of the day, we had different ideas in terms of what I thought, as the person going through this, this is my decision, feeling a lot of ownership of this versus what
single mom by choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think, for the best, because now I look back and I think to myself, had this had worked out, not to say that it couldn't have been a beautiful thing. However, I feel there probably would have been some resentment on my side, being that he wouldn't have been financially responsible for, all of the, things that come with raising a child and the sleepless nights and all of that. And so, I never wanted to resent him for that, but it's almost
that makes sense
not to, right?
Well, and when you don't have any idea who this individual is, and they've chosen to be an anonymous donor, which I want to talk about in a minute too. But when you've chosen to go this route and you have no idea who that person is, it's not like you could ever in the middle of the night or say, I'm not sleeping, or if something happened, you wouldn't feel compelled to say, she won the spelling bee, we got into a car accident. There's no ownership where you feel like I need to call this individual and say, hey, this part of you is winning at life or is having a struggle.
Right. And honestly, like, once I kind of got to that point where I'm like, okay, if you're gonna do this, you are gonna have to like go online and look at these donors on a sperm bank. And it's one of those processes where you're like, what am I doing right now? It's like being on Match.com or eHarmony, right? Like it really did compare it to the dating sites that it's, with obviously a much different tone and amount of information on there. But it's just, you go down a rabbit hole, and I can't even count how many times I probably went on over and over and over. And then eventually I think I boiled down between like 2 profiles, and,
are you looking?
Wrote my mom into it at that point.
Oh, that's so funny. Are you choosing based on genetics? Are you choosing based on health? Are you choosing based on, I don't know how much information they give you. I've honestly never looked at profiles on a sperm bank. So when you're making these decisions, I imagine there's so much that goes into it, because you're wondering, does this person have a history of diabetes and heart disease and cancer?
Sure.
And also, does it go as deep as matching your genetics with someone else to do the best they can to avoid any particular mutations that could be problematic?
Yeah, you get a very comprehensive profile. I will say that, like all health history. There's like, you can, I think, pay extra to have sort of some genetic screening done, like as an added element if you want. Okay. And, you get the full picture. You can even, you get an actual picture of the donor as a child, like as a young child. And there's some donors that also have pictures of themselves as adults. So if you want that, they can see, what they then look like as an adult. I did not. But I had a picture of, what the donor looked like as a child. So for me, like that was enough. And and you get like an audio recording of them answering questions, kind of like an interview
so interesting.
Style. Yeah. And it's no video, obviously, but at least you can kind of hear their, where they're coming from and everything. And you can see like, who else has used this donor, and you can actually see, like, go onto a site and see, like, of the other people that have used this donor, like, have they had successful pregnancies, and have they been a boy or a girl, if that family has chosen to report that information. So it's kind of like an internal, like, chat room for families that only select this donor. So it is a wild amount of information to navigate and process. And at the end of the day, it's like you're throwing it up, in having faith that, this is the path forward, and crossing your fingers and toes and all of it to make sure that, like, there's so much that you want to control in this process, right? Like the element of control is really strong,
intense, right?
Yeah, and like,
because you've made this decision and you've said, I'd like to be a mom. Now help me be a mom. Yeah. So then what happens? You start to go through the process, and does it happen for you right away?
Oh my gosh, no. And then, so I initially, when I turned 40, I froze my eggs, and I thought, okay, I'll freeze these eggs. They're 40-year-old eggs. Who knows, if they're going to be a magic bullet in there or not, but I'll freeze them just to have them. Because I wasn't at that point ready to go down the donor route. At that point, I still was like holding out hope. Maybe in 6 months, I'll meet the love of my life. And then I won't have to, go to the donor.
Right. I won't be making a choice to do it on my own.
Right. Like you just keep thinking like, but there could, we could just
maybe
bump into each other, on the train. You never know.
We've watched one too many John Hughes movies, and maybe serendipity is coming my way.
Yeah, exactly. So, then I went through that process, and then finally decided to, go down the donor route. Like, if I'm going to have the eggs, you got to have, the sperm to go with it. And that's part of the recipe. And then use the frozen eggs. They thawed them and then fertilized them. And then based on how those results turned out, I had my first transfer. And I remember them saying, do you want me to transfer 1 or 2? And, 2 is like, well, there's always the possibility you could have twins. And I'm like, Okay, but like considering all the factors of these, like they rate them in terms of the quality. So I think they did do two, and then it did not work. And of course, I was devastated, and I
Right.
hoped that like this would be like a one and done situation, kind of
Right.
in a naive mental state, I guess. And then
I don't know that it's so much naive, Marla, as it is hopeful, right? Like
Hopeful. It is, yeah.
you have put so much heart and energy and light into this particular situation. And I also think you are financially investing.
Sure.
You are mentally and energetically investing.
Yep.
And I suspect you have a finite number of eggs that you've frozen.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what that number is.
Yeah.
I don't know if they harvest a certain number, if there's a maximum number that they could have. At what point, at what age did you decide to go through with this particular part of the process?
Yeah. So the eggs were frozen at 40. I think it was 40, between 41 and 42 when I had the first transfer. It was January of 2019. So I was probably 42 at that time. And so, and then once that didn't work out, it was like, essentially it's like an inverted pyramid. You start at, they would, once they do the egg retrieval, they get X number of eggs, and then the number once they fertilize them, it keeps going down, 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 down. So, you start out with the largest number of like, we've got this many eggs, and you think, oh, this is great. And then they're like,
right,
but actually you have this many embryos, so it's a numbers game. And talk about following all the rules, but not having control over the process. Like that, again, is the mental head game. But again, the hope and the faith that you have to maintain and dig deep to get on days when you feel like it's not there. It's huge. And so eventually went through another egg retrieval, had another transfer. That transfer did not work. And those were fresh eggs, not like frozen then thawed. So I think eventually it took me three egg retrievals and 3 transfers before the final, I think the third transfer eventually worked. And a lot of other things in between there that had to get worked out and tweaked before that final transfer did actually happen. You're going in every day. They're checking your blood every day. I mean, it's a cycle, and it's exhausting,
I can only imagine.
Doing it on my own, I would say, to all the other moms I know that have gone through this and have pursued this on their own in this way, it's just, we are like we are a force to be reckoned with. We are.
So you have a community of other women that and that were supporting you through this process because you had developed a core group of other SMBC women that in a community you didn't know existed before.
Right. Yeah, in Chicago. And it was essentially started on a Facebook group. And then one thing led to another. And we realized there was a significant number of us that were all trying to go through this process. And then we had all gotten pregnant around the same time. And we were all having babies that were due in 2020, starting in the spring of 2020. So,
my heart.
Yeah. So I still remember this day of meeting them all for like brunch in February of 2020 before the world shut down in March, and thinking like, wow, this is so amazing. Like that we have, this group now of us that can talk to each other, support each other, ask questions to each other. And like still today, like it's grown. More people keep getting added to the group. But it's grown to the point where it's like, wow, like this is pretty impressive.
You made a comment early on that you have a small family, right? Mm-hmm. And that you weren't ever going to be the aunt or have the aunts. Do those feel like the aunts? Do they feel like, we haven't talked about your daughter yet, and I want to do that. Her name is Lucy, right? So do those feel like Lucy's aunts? Do they feel... I mean, do those feel like your chosen family?
I feel like, we've met and we've, trying to schedule meetups and play dates with moms and with single moms, especially, and their kids.
Right.
Like, it's a little challenging. There's one in particular who, she has a son and I have a daughter, and we are, pretty much the same age, and she and I have become very close. And so, we have, I feel like, of all the moms, right? I think it's always so tricky when you get into moms groups, right? Because you're like, okay, well, we're relate, we can connect, and we have our kids in common and our journey in common and all of that. And then you obviously don't, personality wise, you click with certain people over other people.
Yes.
So yeah, one of the moms in particular, she and her son have just become, I feel like you do feel like they're an extension of your family in a lot of ways, because you feel like, no one can know what this journey is like unless you are walking in it. You are actually doing it.
What is your personal definition of hope?
To me, it is feeling that you don't have control, right? And so many of these moments that I have been through over the course of, trying to get pregnant, pursuing motherhood, being a parent, actually being the parent for the last 5 years, there's so many moments where you realize, like, I am not in control. And then realizing that no matter what, you still have hope. No one can take that away from you. No one can take that feeling away.
Did you ever have a moment where you thought, this might not happen?
Oh, for sure. After the second failed transfer, they tell you to, like, go off all the drugs that you've been on. You've been on all these drugs, hormones and everything, cold turkey. And suddenly stop at cold turkey, like the next day, like once you realize that, the transfer didn't work, it's like, okay. And I'll never forget going into my office. No one at work knew what was going on. I didn't tell anybody.
Wow. Really?
I kept it very tight with, like, just my mom. Even my dad didn't know.
Really?
Yeah.
Why?
It was one of those things where, like, it was too hard to have to explain everything over and over and over every time I would tell somebody. So I kept it to, like, my core friends and my mom and people that I knew I could just
trust.
People also that had been through it. A couple of my close friends who have kids now who had been through it.
Had been through the in vitro process?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they had gone through IVF before. So
I have two different questions. My brain, I have so many questions for you. This is such a beautiful process, and my heart is so full being on the side that you have Lucy now, right?
Yeah.
When you find out that you're pregnant, what is that moment like?
Oh my gosh.
You actually, I actually have chills thinking about it, right? I know how excited I was, but I also know that I hadn't put the heart and the effort and the fear and the worry into it. And I certainly wasn't choosing to do it alone.
Yeah.
Right. So walk me through that day.
Yeah. I remember had gone in, I'd had the transfer, and then you go in for a blood test, like, few days later, whenever they tell you to come back to have the blood test to see.
That quick?
Yeah. And which is like a week later or something. And then you wait. And then I got a phone call from the nurse. And now I'm like, I'm going to cry again.
That's okay.
Like, I'm visualizing where I was. I was sitting in my old apartment on the couch. I remember sitting there.
Were you alone?
And I was, yeah. When was that? That must have been October, like late October, earlier mid-October, late October of 2019.
Well, I'm taking that call with you right now. Okay, so the nurse calls.
Yeah, so the nurse calls and she's like, test is positive. You're pregnant. I was like,
Marla.
Speechless as I am now. It's like, and then the next mind, like, holy shit.
Right. I have tears for you. But then you instantly think, I'm doing it. I am, like, put your hands on your tummy and you're like, right. Little one, we're doing it. Right. Like, it's you and me.
And yeah,
right?
At that point, I did not know the sex. They asked me if I wanted to know the sex of the embryo before they transferred it. And I was like,
science is amazing.
yeah,
They could have told you right then.
I couldn't handle that. I was not
No.
for that. Yeah. And so of course at that moment, once they tell you, and then you go in to have them scan you for like that first detect the heartbeat, like the first initial like ultrasound that kind of shows that everything is going the way it should. And you're just going in there and you're like, and she's like, you need to, breathe.
Breathe. I need you to keep breathing because you're breathing for her too. So
right.
we need everybody on the same plane.
You're breathing. And because in the back of your mind, I mean, it's still the mind game of like, what if, like
right.
You've worked so hard and you've done so much to get here. Like you just don't want anything to
go sideways. Were you on edge the entire pregnancy? Was there ever a point that you were able to take a deep breath and say, okay, kiddo, we're good?
I feel like, that 5 month check-in where they do like all the anatomy, everything. And it's like the massive ultrasound where they look at everything, make sure everything is A-okay. That I felt once that happened, I could breathe a little easier. I was, at that point I was 43, and I knew they said I was going to have a C-section. Like there wasn't even a debate about it due to like other stuff from my past. And so it's just like, okay. And like, I didn't even like, that didn't even faze me at all. I was just worried, obviously my main concern was like having a healthy baby, and she is the picture of perfect when she was born.
Marla, tell us about Lucy.
Yeah, she is. I mean, it's still, there are days where like, I have to remind myself that I am a mother. Like you think about going through so much life, right? Like your 20s, your 30s, and then suddenly you hit 40 and like you've spent, significant portion of your life post-college working and doing all the things. And then suddenly it's like, oh yeah, I'm a mother and I'm doing it.
I am responsible for another human being.
Right. Yes. The weight of that has hit me in waves over the course of the last 5 years. So, and I just knew, like if you want to be a mom, this is obviously time is running out. I also like considered adoption at one point, kind of looked into it, but never like went down the path as far as, I did with the IVF. And they basically said, like, if you got to choose one lane or the other. Like a lot of people try to parallel path and they recommend against that for a lot of reasons, because there's so much information and everything happening at you and coming at you at the same time. And I get why people do that, right? Because they're just trying to increase their odds of starting a family. But yeah, I mean, Lucy was born June 12th, 2020. And yeah, by the way, that was like, in the thick of COVID. I was like, oh, great.
Oh, yes.
We're going to do this in COVID era. My little COVID baby.
She's a COVID baby. Okay.
Yep. So yeah, I mean, lockdown, it was just a wild time. That summer was a crazy summer in Chicago for sure. And I didn't even know if I could have somebody with me in the hospital at first. Then they said, yes, you can have someone. And I said, well, it's going to be my mom. And then they said, well, she can come and she can be in the room with you, but like, she got to stay the whole time. Like if she leaves the hospital for any reason, she cannot come back. Oh, like, what? That's not fair. So finally they relaxed the policy. She was able to stay with me and just, be there, like at least for the time that I needed her. And just that idea of like, you want me to go through this alone? I mean, I'm already choosing to do this on my own.
Slight disconnect there. So I'm going to ask you, we've changed locations, but we have you back. So I am happy to have you back.
Yes.
I wanted to ask, so a slightly sensitive question, I think. Your mom has clearly experienced a loss that I wouldn't wish on anybody, right? But unless you are planning on going through this again, Lucy is her first and only grandchild, right? Yep. So what is it like? What was it like to see her, have her in the room when Lucy was born, and then to see, I get chills even asking this question, to see her with her granddaughter, right? Because aside from you've talked about your family being small. Clearly, your mom was one of the only people that you shared this experience with.
Yeah.
And to choose her to be in the room with you is gorgeous, right?
Yeah.
So what's it like to share that experience with her and then to have her there, see her with her granddaughter?
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of one of those out-of-body experiences where, I just told her, keep breathing. Like, no matter what, keep breathing.
You're coaching your mom during your pregnancy.
Right, yeah. So I'm like, I think she was probably just as nervous as I was that day. Like, she definitely, we were all kind of on pins and needles. I mean, it's having a baby alone, right? But then you throw in all the COVID restrictions and all the things and all of that. And yeah, she was right there with me and like in the room where the C-section happened, and then was able to hold, I think, the nurse asked her, like, can I hold her? Like, cause I couldn't actually hold her at that point when I was laying down, but, and my mom was so scared. She was like, gonna drop her. You're not going to drop her. So having that picture of her with Lucy and me and then like, in the hospital, the three of us, and was just, I mean, it's 3 generations, and it's, I'm sure, there are probably many days where she's like, maybe, I'm not going to be a grandma, and, that's okay. But she never, I feel like ever, in the course of like parents saying like, I want to be, it's never that conversation.
She never pressured you.
Pressured me where it's just like, well, if you're not going to get married, if you're not, in a relationship, are you going to try to have a baby on your own?
Right.
Like, that was not.
It was never part of her conversation.
No. I'm sure when I told her that I was thinking about doing this and that I was thinking about pursuing this, I'm sure she probably was like, because I mean, my parents got divorced when I was 6, 7. My brother was probably 8 or 9. So she knows, what it's like raising 2.
What it's like to do it on your own.
Yeah. So she's been there, and has walked, in the shoes of having to manage everything and work full time and all of it. So, there are days now when I'm like, venting to her about what, life is like and everything. And I have to like remember and pause and be like, right. Yeah. You're
like, oh yeah,
2 kids. So
what is it like continuing to walk this path, and how have you had any conversations with Lucy about it?
Yeah. I mean, we have books, we started reading books like when she was, even a toddler, about kind of all families are different. There's a great book by Todd Parr that Love Makes a Family. There's so many great children's books out there that celebrate diverse families. And we're lucky that we live, in a part of Chicago, in a neighborhood where, diversity is everywhere. So I would say, she knows we come from a mommy and Lucy family. She has a Grammy, a papa. And then, our godparents are like aunt and uncles to her, and a lot of my close friends I refer to as like auntie so-and-so, So,
right.
But, there was a case at her camp out on the playground after I was picking her up, and, one of her friends, little boy, he just looked right at me and he's like, so does Lucy have a dad? And I'm like, actually, we're a mommy and Lucy family. Like, it's a mommy and me family with Lucy and me, and we have a Grammy and a papa. So no, she doesn't have a dad. And he's like, oh, so it's just girls? And you're like, yeah, just girls in our family. And he's like, okay.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And when you're going through this process, some of that therapy, some of that counseling, do they help you with how you would handle some of these questions in the future?
Yeah. I mean, I have worked with the same counselor now since I started going through IVF, through Northwestern. And she is just a huge part of me being able to navigate this on my own. I mean, I I talk to her at least on a monthly basis now, but has, from the time that I went through navigating IVF, the failed transfers to the successful transfer to the birth to the, postpartum. And I still remember talking to her after I had Lucy, and as she's a newborn, and I'm like having these crazy dreams at night, which I'm sure, a lot of moms have, like right after they give baby, like, why not throw some crazy nightmares in there? Thanks hormones. Like, just give us
always a process.
Wild ride while we're at it, trying to survive, take care of a newborn. But yes, I would say like critical component to all of this, helping me, kind of focus and realize and be like, a huge cheerleader at the same time. I mean, it's moms, like regardless of whether, your situation, like, I just feel like there is so much need in this world for us to cheer each other on, support each other, remind each other you're doing a great job. Like I, have 2 close friends. They each have 4 kids. And not until I became a mother myself, I wanted to be like, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm sorry I wasn't there for you more. I'm sorry I wasn't more like, just cheering you on. Like I had no idea, because of course, until you become a mother, you just don't know. You don't know. You can't.
It's amazing what happens when we walk a certain path and are suddenly able to validate someone else's experience. Yeah. I can remember my OB saying to me with my second child, she was then pregnant, and she said, Danielle, I have been lying to my patients all these years, because they would come and they would complain about a particular, this hurts, that hurts. And she would say, no, it doesn't. You're fine. And then she was pregnant and she said, oh my gosh, they're right. Because at that point, she had only been operating based on what she'd read in the books rather than the actual experience she'd had. And it's so interesting to me what it looks like. I've heard it said, and I swear I'm going to say it over and over again when I'm doing these podcasts. The most valuable information we can give someone, the most valuable advice, the most valuable validation we can give is what somebody already knows. It's looking at someone and saying, this happens. This is an experience. So someone can say, oh my gosh, I'm not alone.
Right. I'm not alone.
Because in so many experiences, we feel lost and alone. Yeah. If someone was to come to you and say, I'm thinking about going the single mom by choice route, what advice would you give them?
Yeah. I mean, I think I had someone reach out to me not too long after I had Lucy, and because I kept wondering, like, why doesn't Northwestern have like a support group that's like built into this process? I'm like, I mean, maybe they have.
They don't.
It just wasn't. No, I mean, it wasn't a clear option at that point. So like, I feel like everyone, you're kind of on your own to like seek out, Facebook groups or other groups. And there are a ton of resources online, but like you need people like physically present in your own community. You need people you can see face to face, have a coffee with, go to brunch with, whatever, I mean, if someone came to me now, exploring it, and I would say like, allow yourself to feel everything you're feeling. It is the scariest decision you will ever make. And I still remember this day, like telling my dad, longtime girlfriend, at one point, she, when I finally told her that I was expecting, and I was so like wrapped up in my head, and I said, I know this is like going to be the hardest thing I ever do in my life. And she said to me, I think you should see it as the most beautiful adventure you're ever going to have, So that's really, it's hard to get there. It's hard to think like, this is going to be a beautiful adventure when you're like going through like, oh my gosh, like, how am I going to manage all this? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do this? And I would say like, the first question to ask yourself is, who is your support network? Before you even, go down this path, like, who can you count on? And whether it's your family, close friends, do you have siblings who are nearby? Like proximity matters, and you obviously, we all know it takes a village. You cannot do it alone. Like it is impossible. So that's kind of, in terms of the checklist of questions to ask yourself. obviously, if you don't have a built-in support network, or you don't have, the people that you may need, again, like, do you have the financial means to be able to afford childcare, a nanny, an au pair? I know other single moms that I have connected with use au pairs, they use nannies, and obviously it's great. Like, you can afford that and go that path. That works. But if you can't, what's plan B going to be, or what are your options going to be? And I just feel like that in seeing, like, even my own father, like, when I knew my mom would be, like, there on the front lines, right? Like, she moved in with me right when I had her. She stayed for, I don't even know how many weeks, and I had a C-section. So that, obviously created some other, issues for taking care of the baby. But at the same time, like, my dad was on the front lines, and, joke that he's like the Uber driver, always driving us around, driving us back and forth. And seeing my dad with Lucy for the first time in the hospital was just, because he had came, like, I think the next day, the day after she was born. That was a whole nother set of emotions, and, like, I look at the picture of him holding her the day or two after she was born, and I look at the picture of him holding me in the hospital when I was born, and it is identical.
Identical.
Yeah. Which is just, there's no better, like, feeling than that.
Is there anything you'd do differently?
I mean, people ask me, like, would you have started earlier? Would you have thought about doing this earlier? And I think, as we go through life, we're going through different phases, different chapters, different relationships. And I think, at the time that I was in that relationship, I think I was maybe wanting to have a baby more than I even wanted to be married at that point. And that was a sign too, right? And kind of like, you got to trust your gut no matter what. And your gut is there for a reason. And it is it is giving you, hopefully, it is giving you, putting you on that path that you should be on. Did you encounter any naysayers? Anyone who said, "Ooh, I don't know if this is a good idea," and if so, how did you deal with that? I mean, I feel like I was very selective in terms of who I decided to reveal. I mean, which is why, like, I didn't tell anybody at work until I found out that I was actually expecting. And, there are some questions of, like, once that happened, once I, was telling people, they were like other people in the office being like, wait,
like, are you dating someone?
Right,
yeah.
right. It's
so,
like,
but good for you. You were unwilling to pull the room. Like, you recognized that there would be people who might have an opinion, and you were not interested.
No.
Good for you. I think that is,
you ask 5 people their opinion, you're going to get 5 different answers. And I just knew, like, for my own sanity, I was like, this is no one's business except mine and who I choose to share it with, which was a pretty small, select group of people. And many who didn't even physically live here. A lot of my closest friends are, like, not physically here. So, yeah, I mean, talk about a surprise. And working in PR at that time, and once my colleagues got out, they're like, we need a press release about this.
Yeah, like, I need to understand exactly what is happening, and how long have you been working on this process, and why did I not know? Right. But I think that is, in terms of hope, right? Like, this is a really powerful lesson I want people to understand. It is okay that you don't pull the room. It is okay that you don't ask everyone's opinion. It is okay that you decide to make this decision on your own, or only speak to a very select people. Yeah. It's okay if other people don't give you their approval. Right. Because at the end of the day, you're going to bed with you, and that's it. Yep. So as long as you feel good in the decision you're making.
Yep.
That's
all that matters. It really, I mean, and you look at Facebook chats, right? And there's, like, a significant, group for the, like, SMBCs on Facebook. And I know everyone's, putting in questions there. And there's a lot of, like, thinkers, they call them, thinking, trying to conceive, or thinking about conceiving and how they go about that. And so I get why people use that as a resource. And so, they'll post
Right.
it. But then you get you look at the responses and you just get it's 20, 20, 30 or more responses from people across all ranges of perspectives, opinions. And I'm like, that is, for me,
Too much.
I cannot.
But you're going to get the same thing on, working mom, stay-at-home mom, breastfeed, bottle feed.
Right.
You'll get the same thing. I have one final question for you before we wrap up. How is your beautiful adventure going?
I mean, let's face it, motherhood is a wild ride. Of course, now, people say, can't imagine your life before your child came into this world. And yes, I remember the life I had, and I realized wow, she is my greatest teacher in so many respects. I hear her in the living room playing, and she'll say, "Mommy, are you looking at your phone? Come play with me." And I'm like, oh my God, this child is more perceptive and more in tune and more present. I strive for that. Right. And
she will continue to be your greatest teacher. I mean, mine, you met mine a million years ago, at Aaron's wedding, and mine are 21 and 19 now. And you last saw them when they were 4 and 2. Right. And you dancing with Cooper when he was a ring bearer, and they were my greatest teachers then. They continue to be my greatest teachers now. And it's such a gift to get to know them as they grow and change and learn and become their own people. And I'm so excited for you. And I'm so grateful to you for taking time with me.
Yes. Thank you so much. Yeah. I mean, being able to watch her thrive and grow and learn and absorb the world around her. You and I come from a world of journalism. We're very curious people. We embrace storytelling and sharing stories. And I think there's no better story to be present for than for your child and see them absorb the world around us. So thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to share my story.
Thank you so much for being here. I so hope that everyone who has had the opportunity to join us on camera or listen to us on the podcast has been able to get the hope and inspiration that I have from you today. And I hope that this has been a good and soft and beautiful space for you here on Hope Comes to Visit. I'm so looking forward to you coming back and joining us again in the future. Thank you so much for being here. We look forward to seeing you again soon. Naturally, it's important to thank the people who support and sponsor the podcast. This episode is supported by Chris Dully, a trusted criminal defense attorney and friend of mine here in St. Louis, who believes in second chances and solid representation. Whether you're facing a DWI, felony, or traffic issue, Chris handles your case personally, with clarity, compassion, and over 15 years of experience. When things feel uncertain, it helps to have someone steady in your corner. Call 314-384-4000 or 314-DUI-HELP, or you can visit dullylawfirm.com to schedule your free consultation.